Welcome to Give a Shift, the podcast you want to be listening to for positive, radical change. My name is Nancy Leeds Gribble, and I am one of your co-hosts.
And I'm your other co-host, Alicia Zidler. And today we have an awesome guest, Nancy.
Yes, today we are super excited to bring you Jane Schuring, and we are going to get to her incredible bio and story in just a minute. But Alicia and I always want to remind you that our mission, we are here to bring you stories like this of inspiration and motivation, because we want to help you make the shifts you need in your life to create the health, the body, the happiness, and the life you feel fantastic living in. All right, so welcome. Yay. We have been waiting for this one. We are so excited. Jane, I am going to read your bio, and this is what Jane sent me. So after experiencing some difficult life challenges, Jane's decision to pursue a career change from a 20-year flight attendant to take flying lessons during what could be called a midlife crisis, divorce, temporary job loss, was met with barriers at every stage. In spite of hearing, "You're too old" or "No one is hiring," Jane was determined to achieve her dream, eventually ending her almost 44-year career with Continental United as a Boeing 737 captain. Her story will inspire those who have experienced the highs and lows of life's trials, particularly a career in the aviation industry. With stories to tell along the way, it began with a spontaneous trip to Los Angeles for an interview as a hostess in 1969 and ended with a smooth landing in Houston with fire trucks on each side of the aircraft spraying the traditional water canyon salute to a retiring captain. I cannot wait to dive into this story.
Already, you haven't even started.
Yes, welcome, Jane. I don't even know where we begin. Like, this is so exciting.
That's a lot to unpack.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a life. We were talking, I met Jane when I came home and I was reading everything. And of course, what caught me right off the cuff was, "You're too old." I'm like, oh my gosh. And look what she's gone on to do. But all the life stuff that you had before that too, right? So many life experiences. So we would love for you to share with us kind of your journey.
Okay. So, when I was living in Chicago, I always wanted to be a flight attendant, but I was too young. So I applied for all these different airlines. They didn't have Google back then, so I had to look in the yellow pages and get applications and send them out. And Continental sent me a telex and said, "Come out for an interview." So I flew to Los Angeles and they hired me. And I sat there just in tears because I had a boyfriend back in Chicago and I didn't want to leave. I ended up being based in Chicago. After I finished my training, I accepted the position, and the boyfriend didn't turn out to be so great, but the job was fabulous. I loved it. And the reason I wanted to be a flight attendant is because I thought it was the only job that I could do where I could go to college full time and get a teaching certificate so that I could be a teacher. Because back then, it was a long time ago, most women were either teachers or nurses or stay-at-home mothers.
Yeah.
And so I was going to school full-time in Chicago, Northeastern Illinois University, and a friend of mine came up to me one day, one of the other flight attendants, they called them hostesses back then.
Yes.
And said, "Hey, do you know there are openings on Guam?" And I said, "Well, I can't go to Guam because I'm going to school full-time." And she said, "You can always go to school, but you may not always be able to go to Guam." And so I put in my transfer and I flew to Guam and was based there for almost 10 years. Met my husband out there. We got married a few years later. We actually came back to the States for almost a year. And then I said, I really miss Guam and I want to go back. So we went back out there and had our first baby and came back and had our second baby in Houston. And so when he was 9 months old, my husband came home from Chicago where he was working. And my other son was almost 5 by then, 4, a little over 4. And my husband came home and announced that he was going to get a divorce.
Completely by surprise? You had no idea?
Completely blindsided me.
Wow.
I had no clue whatsoever.
You have the 2 young boys and you're
Right.
now getting divorced.
Right. And this was in July of 83. And 2 months later, my parents came down and we were on our way to have dinner, had a babysitter for the boys. And we heard on the radio that Continental had declared bankruptcy.
Oh.
So now I didn't have a job. So I had no husband, no job.
And 2 kids.
And 2 kids.
And 2 kids. And
Little
I thought,
ones.
well, I have to figure out, what I'm going to do next, because I didn't know how soon or if I was going to be able to go back to work as a flight attendant. Right. Well, I was able to go back to work about 8 months later, and they had cut our pay 60%. And I thought, well, I have a mortgage to make. I can't afford to live in this house. I can't afford to feed these kids on that salary. And I started thinking I have to get a new job. And I went to furniture stores and I applied at every job you can even imagine. And well, I tried substitute teaching for a little bit, but I came home with a headache every night. So I thought, this is probably not for me. And, and I had 2 kids already. I didn't want a whole classroom full of them. And so anyway, about a year or so went by, and I was at work one day. I was making the announcement for safety before takeoff. And we were still at the gate. The pilots were doing their checklist. And I swear it's just like I had a message from God. This is what you need to do. And so after takeoff, I went up to the cockpit and I said, hey, I've decided to take flying lessons. I'm going to fly these airplanes one day. And I was excited and I was serious. And the captain and the first officer both turned around and they said, all the flight attendants say that. It's too hard. You'll never do it. And I'm like, well, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. And so I went out to Hooks Airport, which is not too far from where I was living. And I bought books and signed up for flying lessons. And I had my first lesson scheduled. And this was February of 1986. And the day before my first lesson, there was a storm. And all the airplanes were destroyed. We had a tornado, and some of them were in the field next door. Some of them were upside down. And I went out there and somehow managed to go through all the security people. And they said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm here for my first lesson. So they said, well, you can't, there's no airplanes that are flying. You can't.
No airplane.
So anyway, I started flying a few weeks later when the airplanes were repaired. And got my private pilot's license in 5 months and started working on my instrument rating. Yes, you have a question?
Oh, I do have a question. I just can't help myself. So you decide, so you take the job, you're back with Continental at the reduced pay. You're doing the work, you get the epiphany, I want to be a pilot, you announce it. You kind of get met with.
He declares it.
Not for lack of, a better way to say it, but kind of like, that's nice. That's nice, dear. That you want to be a pilot. Good for you. You're a single mom with 2 little ones, but you're like, no, I really want to do this. Like, was it just that strong of a feeling that despite like kind of what most people would look at as the limiting circumstances, money, single parent, kind of, maybe do I need to believe them? Like, what am I thinking? Like, what drove you to keep moving forward? Like, and go, I'm doing it.
I think that anyone who chooses to do something completely different in life, whether it's going off on a major hike or taking a trip around the world or just about anything, I think that if you're motivated enough and you have the determination in your heart, that nothing is going to stop you. And I had so many negative comments when I first started, everybody was saying, oh, like you're too old. Nobody's ever going to hire you. And, this airplane is for a man, and that's why it takes so much strength. And, um, and it's too expensive. And like, nobody's hiring. And I said, I know, but I'm not ready to be hired yet. So I can wait.
I love that. I love that.
I was enormously determined. And I cannot recall one single time when I thought, maybe I should give this up. Maybe I should do something different. Is this really going to work? And so I started working on my instrument rating a few months later.
Yeah.
I was taking a few lessons for my instrument training, and I had dated a pilot that I met on the airplane, and I found out we were going to have a baby. And so I thought, well, okay, I have two choices here. Actually, I had more than two, but the two choices that I thought that I had were to either stop flying until after the baby was born, or to hurry up and finish everything before I had her. And I thought, well, I'm not getting any younger, so I think I'll just, hurry up and push on. And so, oh my gosh, I got my instrument rating in like 4 months, and then I worked on my commercial rating, and then I did my multi-engine rating. And when I did that, I was 7.5 months pregnant. And that was kind of a stretch. It was challenging.
Literally.
With 2 kids working. My
gosh. Working as a flight attendant. And let me back up and say that when I first found out I was pregnant, we were going to dinner. And we went out, and I told him, I was so excited. I thought, maybe he'll propose, And I told him that we were going to have a baby. And he said, you did this on purpose. And so I'm not going to say a lot more about that right now, but basically, that was it. He took me home, and so I did it all by myself.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, well, I really want this baby. And so when I had her, I was almost 40. And I'd finished all my ratings. I was ready to be hired. And so I had a flight one day, and one of the secretaries was on my flight, and she saw me with a big map. And she said, what are you doing? Are you learning to fly? And I said, well, actually, I'm flight instructing now, and I'm planning a trip for one of my students. And she said, oh, well, do you have a resume? And I said, oh, sure. And I picked it up out of my bag and handed it to her. And she said, well, okay, thank you. And I didn't think anything of it. I thought, I don't have enough hours. Nobody's going to hire me. And about 3 weeks later, I got a phone call saying, hey, do you want to come and have an interview? And I thought, oh, that'll be super fun. It'll be good practice for when I'm ready to be hired, right? And so I went for the interview, and they said, well, you don't have a lot of flight time. Convince us why we should hire you. And by the way, I was the only woman in the
I'm sure
interviewees, and I had to dress for the part, right? And so all the guys were wearing dark suits, either brown or navy blue or black suits, and here I am, and the only suit that I had was white culottes with a white jacket, and I put on a red silk blouse, and I had this really pretty print silk scarf, and I thought, well, okay, and here's me in the middle of all these people. And so when the guys said, you need to get more flight time before we hire you, I said, well, how much flight time would you like me to get? And they said, well, at least 50 more multi-engine hours. And I said, okay, I'll call you when I get it. And they were going to put me in the September class. This was July, early July. And so I called them when I got the hours. I had gotten my multi-engine instructor rating and built up more flight hours and had students. And when I called them and I said, okay, I have the extra hours. And they said, oh, they filled up the class. It's full.
Oh, you have been opposition central.
Huh?
Yeah.
So, I was motivated.
Talk about traversing some serious roadblocks. Jane's like, okay, what you got? Like, what's next?
Exactly. So anyway, I showed up for the class anyway. And the ground instructor looked at this list of all the students, and he said, I don't have your name on the roster. And I said, oh, you know what? That's a typo.
I was gonna say, did you say it was a typo? Because I would have.
I love you. Fabulous.
And he goes, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yeah, they gave me a manual to study, and so yeah, I should be on the list." And so he penciled me in, and 3 days later, I had an ID. So I started out at Continental Express, flying the ATR, which is an airplane made in France. It's a propeller airplane.
Okay.
And I was a first officer sitting in the right seat for 4 years. Then I upgraded to captain for 4 years, and then I went back to Continental. And when I first found out that I was going to be in this class, back up a second here, I went to the director of in-flight and said, "Can you give me a leave of absence until I finish training and finish my probation time?" And he goes, "Oh, you know what? You're going to have to quit. That's another company." And I said, "Well, I've been here 20 years. I'm not going to quit." So I wrote letters to all the guys that I had known over the years who worked in vice president positions in flight operations, and asked them to help me get a leave of absence, and they did. So I was able to have a backup plan just in case it didn't work out somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so when I came back to Continental, I was a second officer on the 727. And by the way, one of the guys who had said that I couldn't do it, the day that I went back to work as a pilot, he was inside the terminal, and he looked at me and he goes, "Oh my gosh, you did it." And anyway, so that was pretty cool. That was exciting.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guys that I flew with on the 727 were captains that I'd flown with when I was a flight attendant, and I knew a lot of them. And so they would come to the cockpit and say, "You look familiar." And I go, "I know, I used to bring you coffee."
That's brilliant. I was your barista.
It was fun. It was fun.
Wow, what a story.
It is. It is. I all I'm thinking in my head while you're sharing your incredible journey, which we're at just the beginning of your whole pilot career journey, is really the obstacles you actually had presented, and honestly the ones that the majority of people, it's in their head. All I'm thinking is single mom, 3 kids, working, becoming a pilot, and whatever somebody says to you, honestly, you're like, "That's nice." And you are like, "I'm going forward anyway." "Oh, there's the classes full. That's nice. I'm showing up anyway. There's a huge storm. That's nice. I'm just gonna do this. You can't do it. That's nice. Good for you." Could you please sprinkle that fairy dust on the rest of us?
Nancy, it's the yes and. So all Jane has to do is shut up and go, "There's a storm." Yes and.
Yeah.
That's the theory. She's just the yes and like supermodel.
Honest to goodness, do you? I ask this with all genuine sincerity. Do you realize, like, all that you did, like? Because you might be like, "No, it's just what I do." But from the outsider version and a person, and we talk to so many people, Alicia and I as coaches, and we hear like all the reasons somebody can't do something over and over. I give my own self the reasons I can't do something. And I'm listening to you and I'm like, "Nancy, get it together."
No, to be honest with you, I think that I was just so positive and so determined. And I thought, I can't let anything stop me from doing this. And I really loved flying. I was a little nervous in the beginning because I didn't know if I would like it. And then at the end, when I finished all my ratings, I thought, gosh, I've been pursuing this for 3 years, because it took me 3 years from start to finish till I was hired. And I thought, what if I get the job and I don't really like it as much as I thought I would?
Yeah.
But I loved it. I mean, I was so excited to just be there and be in the cockpit, and I felt so comfortable. And my first flight on the 727, when I was a second officer, I got to the airplane early and was checking things in the cockpit. And then I went out to do the walk around the airplane. And one of the flight attendants was in the galley. And she says, "Oh, hi, I've never met you before." And she introduced herself and I introduced myself. And she said, well, I've never met you before. I'm wondering why I haven't seen you. And I said, well, this is my first day. And she said, well, you act like you've been here forever. And I said, I feel like I've been here forever. And at that point, it was 28 years since I'd started with the company.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I was back at Continental and I was super happy.
Yeah.
And
And
then,
you knew your way around the plane.
yes, absolutely. And then a year later, I transferred over to the 737 and I stayed there for the rest of my career because it was the airplane that allowed me the schedules that where I could stay home the most with the kids.
Mhm.
And, you know, I had kids in every school at that point. So,
Yeah.
so
Had you grown up in a world of like, have you always kind of overcome adversity from like a young age? You always had that mindset of anything in school that was challenging for you? I mean, you wanted to be a teacher, so that's very like structured, open, you know,
yeah,
receptive, but because we do deal with so many people that will take the most minor of reasons and make it a Everest of why not to's.
Yes.
I'm just so like most people would be like, I'm having another kid, like tap out. And you're like, oh,
yeah.
cool. Let's just fast rush this process. Baby's gonna be here in about 16 hours and I got a test in 12. Let's roll. Like
Yeah, let's roll. Let's hurry up. You know, I guess I was always a stubborn individual. My mother, you know, happily told me that I was hard to get along with.
yes.
And so I guess I kind of was. I didn't really, you know, when I look back on it, I go, gosh, I must have had a lot of energy. I never really thought of failure. I just never,
Cool.
it never occurred to me that that was not going to happen. I thought I'm going to make this happen, no matter what. And
Oh my
so,
gosh.
you know, I don't know what else to tell you about it
Yeah.
because I was so enamored by flying and learning about the engine and the weather. And oh my gosh, it was like, this is hard, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun.
So that came after, like, were you enamored with flying as a hostess / flight attendant for our
I was,
were you as enamored or kind of just like, this is like, for me, I had always thought like, oh my gosh, it's so structured and fun. Like I always thought I should have totally been a Jane, but I didn't do it because I was like, I could travel. I love sleeping. Like, I don't care about being in a backpack or a bag overnight. I'll go anywhere. Like, let's do this. But some people don't really have that. And I do think it takes drive because you've got the crazy hours.
Yeah.
Right.
right.
And you have to like flying. And I feel like I meet so many people that are like, I hate flying.
Right.
But I just find like there's such a peace about being in the air. Like it's so cool. Like we fly. Like, did you have that and then find your love for, oh, maybe I could like fly this bad boy myself?
Well, no, it was completely spontaneous. I mean, I had always kind of in the back of my mind thought about it, but every time I mentioned it to someone, they'd say, oh, you know, that's a man's job. And so, you know, I don't want to make it sound like it was all, you know, negative, but there were some times when a lot of men didn't like having a woman in the cockpit. And particularly when I upgraded to captain, they didn't necessarily like taking orders from a woman. So I had to kind of talk to them and say, look, we're a team. We're in this together. You need to tell me if you see a problem or if you are not comfortable with something that we're doing, you know, for deviating around weather. Do we want to go to the right or to the left? And which way is the storm moving? And that sort of thing, you know, so yeah.
Oh, well, if you just make it sound like it's their idea, you're fine, right? That's real.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's negative. I think honestly, I don't think anything, I think it's the reality of the times you were in and being honestly a front leader being like, again, like, okay. And it's a man's world. And it was, we all know it. I mean, times are different now, but it was a man's world. Right. And, you know, and to just be like that, that barrier is not going to exist for me is fabulous. I am curious. I only had one child. And when I was in real estate, I I felt like navigating that was crazy. Like these crazy hours and people calling you at all times of the day and night. How on earth do you navigate a flight attendant and a pilot schedule with 3 kids?
Good question. So when I was a flight attendant, I was a little bit more senior. So I could choose the trips that I worked. And usually I flew a turn, which means I would fly like to Los Angeles and back, or to San Francisco and back in one day. And when I became a pilot, that was a little bit more of a challenge, but I was able to trade my trips around with other people, or with the trips that were in open time for picking up. And so I was home almost every night until my daughter was about to go to college. And so, yeah, so that was super helpful. I did have a live-in when she was little, just in case I had to stay overnight, or in case I had a short layover. But most of the time I was home at night. So I was very fortunate. And then when she went off to college, and I was a captain at that point, I thought, oh, I'm going to fly 4-day trips. I'm going to have long layovers. I'm going to go anywhere I want to, because it gave me an opportunity to have a little bit more freedom and to just sort of go play and enjoy the cities where I was staying and visit people that I knew there and that sort of thing. So,
that is fabulous.
It's out of school. Where'd you go, Jane?
One of my favorite places was Anchorage. And I loved it. Anchorage, Seattle, San Francisco, anything on the West Coast, I loved. So
beautiful.
Yeah. Now, how did you end up staying here in Houston and not maybe moving over there?
When I returned from Guam back in '81, after I'd been there almost 10 years, this was a base. We didn't have a lot of bases then. And so I just sort of stayed here all that time. So
yeah.
So these are my
Did you say, Nance?
Oh, I said because she likes the storms that we have.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
They bring back fond memories. So you then did all of this, and then your career spanned how many years as a pilot? Like, take us through a little bit of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was a flight attendant for 20 years, right on the button. So I started in October of '69, and I went to September of '89, and then I became a pilot. And so I was a flight attendant for 20 years, and I was a pilot for 24. And I was about 3 months short of 44 years with the company when I retired.
Wow.
And if people question my age because they do the math, I just say, I just started when I was 3.
Yeah.
I was like, for anybody that's just listening, Jane looks phenomenal. So
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And oh my God. I mean, I'm just like enamored. Talk about like just living life to the fullest. And I am going to add this. You are not a one-hit wonder like, oh, I had this second season. If I read correctly, you also hike volcanoes?
Well, I have hiked some of them, the one in Guatemala, and now I can't remember where the other one was, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. We were on a long layover and we went hiking, and it had erupted about 10 months earlier. And while we were hiking on it with a guide, it started erupting. We heard these boulders shooting up in the air, and I went, oh, this doesn't look good. And I turned around to the guys I was with and I said, do you think we should go back? And they go, maybe. And so I looked at the guide that we had hired and I said, do you think we should leave? And he goes, oh no, this is a good day. Come.
I love it.
It's erupting.
He's like, Jane, why start saying no now? Let's go.
It's an active volcano. Come on in.
Come on in. So
must be crazy inspired by you.
It was super fun. And so we tried to do a lot of things on layovers and enjoy it. So I will tell you that, the retirement age used to be 60. And 6 months before my 60th birthday, they created legislation and the president signed it to increase the retirement age to 65. And that was in late of, I think it was 2007. And then about a month later, I went for my annual mammogram and they found cancer.
Mm.
So I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was, again, kind of blindsided, flabbergasted, surprised, shocked, all of those things. And I thought, oh man, I don't want to lose my job. But anyway, I had surgery several times that year and had to go through chemo. And so they wouldn't let me go back to work until 6 months after I had finished chemo. And so I was out of work for a year and a half. And then had to go back and be retrained so that I was current in everything, and was able to return to work for the last few years of my career. So yeah, and then that was really hard. And then while I was going through chemo, I was feeling kind of nauseated. I'm sure if you know anyone who's ever experienced that, it's super unpleasant. And I was laying on the sofa one day, feeling sick and feeling really sorry for myself. And I sat up and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to stop this pity party and use this time off work as an opportunity. So all those years that I had pursued school and gotten 2 associate's degrees, I'd never finished my bachelor's. So I thought, well, I'll just go to Sam Houston and finish my degree. So
Wow.
What am I doing with my life?
I gathered up all my transcripts, and I would go to the doctor's office and have a chemo infusion on Monday, and Tuesday and Thursday drive 45 miles to Huntsville and take classes all day. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. So
again,
anyway, I graduated.
Where most people would be like, not doing anything, got the diagnosis, don't need to, pilot, captain, don't need to do anything. Like, you're like, I'm going to go get those degrees because I can.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I didn't need to, of course.
No, you didn't need to.
I really, really wanted to accomplish that. I mean, it was really important to me to have that degree. And so I graduated less than 2 years before I retired. And then my mother came down. She was probably, I think, 75 or something at the time. Maybe, no, she was older than that. And then my 3 kids came in and we had a big party. So,
oh, how fun.
Yeah. My gosh, Jane. Now, your mom was young when she had you, right?
She was 19 when she had me. So yeah, she passed away just 3 years ago, and she was 92 and a half, and she would want me to say the half.
And I will tell you, because she earned it. And I tell everybody, you hold that half.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It matters.
And to what Alicia had asked earlier, like, your parents, did they instill any of this in you, or did they even kind of fight it in you? Like, how was that part of your life, like, that maybe molded you into this amazing human being that you are?
Well, thank you. I don't think that they instilled it in me. I think that my mother and I clashed enormously. We butted heads at every turn. You know, she would say something to me and I go, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I guess I was just born with that stubborn streak. But she did confess to me later that she also had a real stubborn streak. And she was so jealous of her little sister when they were younger. She told me she used to swing her arms when they were walking down the street so she could snap her sister, smack her in the shoulder or whatever. And I said, well, there you go. That's where I got it from. And so I came by it honestly.
Are you an only child?
Me? No, I have one sister.
You also have a sister. Okay.
Yes. She's 2 years younger. So I'm the oldest, and I guess, the older child syndrome, right?
Yeah. Does she live here in Houston too?
She lives in Arkansas. That's where I grew up.
Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Now, I read, and I'm curious about it, that you wrote your favorite flying weather is in the fog.
It is. The reason for that is because we get to rely totally on the instruments, and it's very smooth. There's no turbulence when you're flying in fog.
Oh.
And normally, if the visibility is really low, we're required to set up an auto land, and the airplane will auto land. So you just program it basically. And tell it what speed and where you want to touch down, and it does it. And so yeah, it's my favorite flying weather. And we fly into Seattle a lot when it's foggy, so that we got to experience that a lot.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so did you really enjoy the learning?
I did. The learning to fly, yes, I loved every bit of it.
I know
When
it's very intensive, right? Like it's a lot of math
well,
and numbers.
I think the most difficult part was learning the engine, because my dad never tinkered with engines or anything mechanical when I grew up. I mean, he would take his car to the gas station and say, fill it up and bring it to my work, and so he didn't do anything like that. And so so I didn't know what a spark plug looked like or a cylinder or any of these things. And so I would go to the hangar when the maintenance guys were doing annual checks on the airplanes, the small airplanes, when I was learning. And I would say, what does the cylinder look like? And show me where it is in the engine. And what does the spark plug look like? And so I had to learn all this stuff. And I did, learn how the electrical system worked and the hydraulic system and everything. So it was fun. Yeah.
Have any of your children taken after you in this?
The middle one did get his private pilot's license when he was 16. And it's funny because he was the one I used to take flying when I first got my private pilot's license. And the other one was in school. So I would say, Austin, you want to go to the airport? We'll do touch and goes. Yeah, okay. And so we went up to the airport, and when you start the engine on a small plane, you have to open the window and yell clear so that no one is around the propeller when you start it. Well, Austin had a little trouble with his R's and his L's. So when he yelled clear, it didn't quite come out like that.
Oh.
Yeah. So some of the other instructors said, yeah, don't let him say that anymore. That's enough. That's enough of that. But we used to have so much fun. And then I would pack up the boys in their swimming suits and we'd fly down to Galveston and tie the airplane up and go to the beach and then go to McDonald's and have something to eat and fly the airplane back up to Hooks. So we had a lot of fun.
That's my grandfather.
Coolest mom ever. What? Like hopping in the plane with my mom and going to the beach and then to the fast food.
We had fun. It was entertainment for the kids. It was great.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
very,
fun.
Very cool. And so what are you doing these days?
Well, okay, right after I retired, I didn't really want to stop working. So I got a job in operations at the airport for 2.5 years. But I had to be there at 6 a.m. And after 2.5 years, I thought, oh, I can't do this anymore. So now I volunteer at the USO at the airport for servicemen who are active or retired. And that's really a lot of fun. We do shifts during the day. So I might work 3 or 4 days in a month. It's not a big time consuming job. And then I do a lot of traveling. And so I crochet. I've made a lot of Afghans and given them all away. And I've learned a lot of things. And I wrote a book. So
that's what I was going to get to. You wrote a book.
So that's another sign.
You want me to tell you about Pilot Barbie?
Yes. Yes.
So, when my daughter was little, she was about 4 or 5 years old, she used to put all of her Barbies in the bathtub and wash their hair. Well, one year when she was around 5 years old, my mother gave her Pilot Barbie. Fantastic. And I said, that Barbie is not going in the bathtub. So I said, that's my Barbie. And so I took it and it's still in the box in my closet. I brought it in here just to show you. But yeah, I took that and I put it up and I said, no, that's my Barbie.
Come to find out that the box is worth more than the Barbie because I have the Scarlett O'Hara collection.
Oh,
I will tell you that the box is like mint. It's supposed to be in mint condition, and I'm like, what about the Barbie?
Well, I wouldn't even sell it. So I thought about it at one point, but no, I need to keep that.
It looks exactly like Jane, y'all.
Right, but what it says about how things have changed when they came out with Pilot Barbie. like the big shifts were happening.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of shifts. You know, I look back on the things that I've experienced in my life, and I think, gosh, you know, I wonder if I could have done it all again. But it's just that the circumstances presented themselves at a time when I needed to push myself. I needed to change what I was doing and do something better. And a lot of it was for my kids, but an awful lot of it was for me, because I couldn't just stay and be a flight attendant with a 60% pay cut and still raise my kids and have any money left to even buy groceries, for crying out loud, at that point. And so I knew that I had to do something different. And I don't know, I just had that determination, that motivation. And I think that that is what carries you when you're trying to do something different in life, to be your authentic self, just to do whatever is necessary, you know, to provide for your family, but to make yourself feel like you're a good human. You know,
you heeded the voice. One, that's huge. I think a lot of people turn away from the voice, and you also grow in that soil of discomfort. And that, I think those are really two testaments to very big changes and shifts in your life that can make or break you. And they made you, like, you allowed them to enrich in everything about you and not excuse yourself from living the life that you really wanted to live.
Yeah.
Right? Like, having that bigger picture is huge. I mean, it's no different, right? How many times you're like, I'm so excited, I'm going hiking. And then halfway through the hike, you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
I'm exhausted. I'm starving. This is so dumb. Why am I doing 20 miles today? And then by the time you get to the bottom, you're like, oh my God, that was so fun. Wasn't the view just so great at the top? And now you're like a crazy person, because the entire time you were being and seeing about it, and then you got up there and you're like, this is beautiful, and then you get to the bottom, and before you're even got your shoes up at the car, you're like, so when are we going again?
Yeah.
Right? Like every hike is like, it's miserable, and you get in the car and you're like, where should we go?
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly what it's like. You know, it's like every time when I was starting to learn to fly, and I was arguing with my instructor all the time. When are you going to let me fly this airplane by myself? And he said, I will tell you when you're ready. And I said, yeah, but I'm ready now. And he goes, no, you're not. And so I guess my stubbornness just never ceased. It just kept pushing me on. And
it's brilliant. I love it. And what prompted you to write the book?
Well, when I was, I guess it was before I retired, I thought, you know, I should write some stories and put them in the computer before I forget things, so that the kids can read about things that I've experienced in my life. And then when the pandemic started, I thought, okay, I can get really serious about this and write a lot more. And I was doing it for the kids. And I talked to a neighbor of mine, and I was telling her about it and telling her some of the stories that I'd written. And she said, you know, you should put this into a book. And I said, oh, I'm not going to mess with that. She goes, yeah, you really should. I think it would motivate young women to do something different with their lives and to go forward. And so I just started working on it. And it's been really a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you, neighbor, for that.
Yes.
I think it'll motivate young women, and I think it will motivate women not so young,
Yes.
you know, who think my time has passed, or you know, I think one of the things I hear a lot with women is, I think it's the kiss of death word. I'm fine. Like, everything's fine. I don't need to, even though that's kind of what I'd like to do. I really would love to try it. Everything is fine. Yeah. And they settle into fine. And of course, you had the motivation to go and do something more with your kids and stuff, but you could also have settled into the fine. You could have been like, well, I know what I'm doing at my job, and the pay, you know, maybe the pay will increase, or maybe I can get more hours, or I can pick up another thing. Everything is fine. I don't need to rock the boat by going and getting my pilot's license.
Yeah. It was a leap of faith. I mean, it really was, because I thought, what if this doesn't work out? Well, I'll just, I'll figure it out. And even my mother called me on the telephone when I started learning to fly. And she said, you do realize you're spending your retirement money on flying lessons and nobody's going to hire you.
Mm.
And then, of course, I got the same phone call from my ex-husband. So I said, well, okay, then I'll get a pilot's license and take it from there and see what happens. But anyway, yeah.
Brilliant. Well,
What is like destiny meant to be?
Yeah. I think you are the what is the word they say? Oh, lucky is where opportunity meets effort. Like it sounds like you are putting in all this effort, and then because you showed up, the opportunities showed up and presented themselves, and then you grabbed them by the horns and were like, I'm all in.
Yeah. And I think that's key, right? Because on this, we always try to say, like, that's the universal flow. If you get the download and you start to heat it, but there's even adversity, all you have to do is keep showing up. And eventually, if you give enough to it, the doors will open and it will have all been exactly as it's supposed to be.
Right.
But it seems like the poster child for that story. And I'm like so excited, one, that you have a book and we all get to read it, and not just the kids. Because I'm not in Houston, I'm not a neighbor, but for everybody, because I really think that there's so many times where, like, I'll tell you for myself, because I'm in the 40s category and I read a lot of books and I go, oh, well, she was like 10 years younger than me. Like, must be nice to be so blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
She was energetic. She got all this done. And I'm like, that's not really the phase of my life. Like, I'm in the right now, getting a little antsy, kind of changing things up. And I don't feel like there's always that many books out there that really cradle that, impetus of like, okay, you want to do it? Like, it's okay, go. Like, right now is a good time. Like, just do the damn thing.
Like,
right?
get after it.
It's okay. If you feel it, do it.
Yeah.
So now we have it in the palm. Let's see it. Can you show our people that?
Yes, we put this on YouTube. So let's
look at it. It's beautiful.
Now, this is a book. Yeah, Plain Jane, and there's a subtitle called "Earning My Wings," because that's what the story is about, how and why I earned my wings. And so it was just so much fun to do it. And I put tons of pictures in here. There's a picture of there's several pictures of me with some of the Micronesian flight attendants when I was out there. And when I ran across the golf course on Guam, I ran into Bob Hope and I ran down to the golf course and got his picture. And so, it was a lot of fun, and I'm very pleased with it. I'm proud of it. So, yeah.
Well, for those that can't see, that are listening to the podcast, the book is Plain Jane. We will absolutely put the link to where people can find the book in our show notes. And Jane can now almost be found on Instagram. And I am going to say, the world needs you, Jane. The world needs you. You have got to get out there and start just sharing who you are. Truly a true inspiration of the things that you've done, and just showing everyone else what's possible. Like, not impossible, but you really are the I'm possible.
And, well, life is full of possibilities, right?
Yeah.
And all you have to do is just get out there and take a chance, take a risk.
I was like, take flight.
Take flight.
Pick a direction and go.
Yeah. I love it.
Yes.
So we'll have to do a follow-up once you have the full Instagram account running up, and see what you do with the next 10 years. Sure, gonna put us all to shame. And so the book can be found on Amazon.
And Barnes and Noble. Yeah, but Amazon is easiest, I think. And the Instagram title is Captain Plain Jane.
Perfect.
LANE, not PLAIN.
Yeah.
And so it's fun. I've been working on it and putting some pictures up, but I'll do some more later today. So
yeah. I feel a book signing coming.
Yes, I had a book signing a couple weeks ago, and I have another one coming up in another 2 weeks.
Okay.
Here in Houston?
Yes.
Oh, well, let me know when.
Okay, I will. Yes, I would love for you to come. That would be fun.
FaceTime me.
We will FaceTime Alicia.
Yes, yes. Well, I really appreciate it. It's been so much fun talking with both of you. I've really enjoyed it. And thanks for letting me just go on and on and on about my story. And I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
I'm just so grateful that you were here. And I just want to make sure that before she goes, that there's not like any last takeaways or anything to unpack. Or I really want to go to Guam. I've heard it's amazing.
It is amazing. It's changed a lot since I was there. When I was out there, it was really super primitive. And now there's like a Tiffany's and all these high-end stores. And
Oh dear.
it's quite different. But
Yeah.
It is.
but
Yeah.
Micronesia is a beautiful place. And
Yeah.
I would love to
Yeah.
go back again. So.
Okay, so before we let you go, where is your next adventure?
Well, my last adventure was to the British Isles, and that was last year. And my daughter's trying to talk me into going back to Ireland and Scotland so she can see it. And so, because I went with friends this last time. And every year at the end of July, I go to Oshkosh for the air show. And
Oh.
it's just an amazing place. I mean, 40,000 people camp for the whole week. And usually somewhere between, I don't know, 600,000 and 700,000 people attend the air show during the week. So it's quite an ordeal, and it's so much fun. And then you have to stop at the end of a root beer stand and have a root beer float.
Yes.
That's a requirement.
I'm surprised my cat root beer didn't meow.
Well,
That's
that's good. So,
Oh, I love it. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Jane.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Nancy and Alicia. Thanks. And it's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Yes. Yes.
Just added
Thank
those
you.
excuses.
And thank you to our listeners. You are going to want to listen to this podcast. You are going to want to share this with every woman that you know, and heck, even a few men who, right, they don't think what's possible. But you've got to share this information. You've got to share this podcast, because really, truly inspirational, and just a person not with all the excesses of the world, but going for what you want, looking at the obstacles, going, that's nice, but I'm coming through, and we really need more of that. So thank you again, and please like and subscribe. We appreciate our listeners, and we will be back next week. Thank you.
Okay, have a great day. Thanks. Bye.